Before we start today's show, I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of the real ones out there. On last night's stream against the Washington Wizards, we crossed over 32,000 subscribers, a huge milestone. And I just want to say thank you to every single person that has hit that big red sub button. And we're not going anywhere. We're only going to continue to put out free daily coverage of your New York Knicks. So if that's what you're looking for, hit that sub button right now. Welcome into New York Knicks Now by Chat Sports. I am your host, Marshall Green. Appreciate everybody for taking time out of their busy schedule to rock and roll with us for a couple of minutes. And I want to start talking about how the Knicks have just played basketball over the last 4 games and to start the OG Anunoby era. We'll talk about trade targets coming up in a second. But look, the Knicks are 4-0 following the Anunoby debut. And they are not just beating teams, they are dominating teams. They dominated the Washington Wizards. They dominated and handled the Philadelphia 76ers, a really good win against the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they are just playing a brand of basketball that this team has really not played so far this year. When Anunoby is on the floor, what they are doing defensively as a team is really unheard of. Think about this. In the 138 minutes OG has been on the floor, the Knicks have a defensive rating of 95 and a net rating of 29.6. That means per 100 possessions, they are outscoring teams by 29 points per game. I understand the offense has been slow so far for Anunoby, but I'm not going to get hung up on that. I'm not getting stuck on that. Watch the games. Use your eyes. This guy is everywhere. This team is playing for each other, and I'm excited to see where this team can go coming in the month of January, February, and hopefully into the early months of the summer. Hats off to the Knicks last night. Huge win. They've been playing great ball, and I'm excited to see what they could do. But I do understand this, that if this team truly wants to be an NBA Finals contender, because right now I think they're the 3rd best team in the East, they are going to need to make another trade. They need to add another talented player. So in today's video, I'm going to name 5 players that I would like to see the New York Knicks look into, and guys that they could take on by trading out the $18.8 million salary of Evan Fournier. It would just be a crime if you let that $18.8 million expire on your roster at the end of the year and you don't get any talent back, because you're not going to have cap space to go sign someone in free agency. So use that as a piece, use that as an asset, and help this team get better right now and in the future. Also, you can add a couple of first-round picks if you need to an Evan Fournier deal, because you have potentially 4 first-round picks in 2024. You're going to have 6 potential first-round picks over the next 2 years. You can trade 8 first-round picks, and you have 11 first-rounders over the next 7 years. When you talk about your 2024 draft capital, you have the rights to the Dallas Mavericks pick, which is top 10 protected. That's going to convey. You're going to have that and your own pick this year. You also own the Detroit Pistons pick, which is top 18 protected this year, will not convey. Then it goes to 13, then 11, then 9. So down the road, when that's top 9 protected, that could and probably, maybe, hopefully, maybe Cade Cunningham turns it around in that organization, will convey. Then Washington goes from 12 to 10 to 8, and you obviously own your first-round pick. And look, I'm not going to talk about trade targets on today's show that we've already spent hours on this channel breaking down. You guys know I love Malcolm Brogdon, and you guys know that I would think DeJounte Murray would be a really good piece. These are my top 2 trade targets that I think are most realistic. But let's talk about 5 guys that I would like to see the Knicks at least go out and see if it's available. And number 1 is a player that I think would be a perfect fit next to Jalen Brunson, and it's his former college teammate and the guy that plays across the road. Mikal Bridges of the Brooklyn Nets. He's making $21.7 million this season, so that could be an easy trade target involving Fournier's salary. Why would the Nets make a trade? Well, 1, they're 16-20 on the season. They are a bad basketball team. Right now, it is the Cam Thomas experience over there, and I feel like Mikal Bridges, who is having somewhat of a down year so far this year, needs to get out of that environment. And I'm not sure he's the type of star where he can go out and request a trade, but he is someone that they traded Kevin Durant for, and I'm sure that they value in the future of this franchise. So if I'm Leon Rose, I am making the Brooklyn Nets say no. I am going to offer really however many picks it would take. I'll give you Evan Fournier. I'll give you Quentin Grimes as a young player you could bring over. I'll talk 3 unprotected first-round picks and then maybe a couple of protected first-round picks. I think he would be an ideal fit next to his college point guard. So far this year for Brooklyn, He's played in 36 games. He's averaging over 20 points per game, almost 4 assists, a high for him over the last 4 seasons. And he's up to 44.8% from the field. And he's really took a leap from 3 over the last couple of years. At the beginning of the year, he was below 30%. Now he's at 34.5. He's a really good player, and he makes this team better. And I just want to see it happen. 2 words, baby. Nova Knicks. Let's get the band together. A closing lineup of Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Julius Randle, and Isaiah Hartenstein, or hopefully Mitchell Robinson when he comes back, would be a lot for any team in this league to handle. When you close your eyes, you say, that is a Fetty 5. Those guys could definitely hoist a Larry O.B. What about a more reasonable and probably realistic trade target? Let's talk about Bojan Bogdanovic, as I like to call him, the professional scorer playing out with the Detroit Pistons. Look, the Pistons are in a bad spot. They are not a good basketball team right now. Bogdanovic is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and if you could add a guy coming off your bench, maybe even he starts for your team. Maybe you have him start at the 2 and OG at the 3. You'd be a really big lineup, and I don't think that's impossible, but I like his ability to just come in and get buckets. Hasn't averaged less than 17 points per game in the last 4 years. He's a guy that's averaging almost 7 3-pointers attempted per game in the last 4 years, and he's knocking it down at around a 40% clip. The dude gets buckets. On the downside, he will be 35 years old in April of this year. And I don't love the idea of trading future capital and future draft assets for a guy that's going to be 35 years old. But I think he fits a need on this team. He gives you another score. He can play, and you can kind of run that second unit through him. He can handle the ball a little bit. He's an underrated playmaker. And in playoff moments and in big-time games when it matters, you need multiple guys that can go and get a bucket. And Bogdanovic can do that better than a lot of people in this league. We got 3 more players to talk about. But first, I got to give a huge shout-out to today's sponsor, Factor. Go to factormeals.com/NicksChat50. Use the promo code NicksChat50. And Factor will hook you up with 50% off. Get started on your resolutions this year with Factor so you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan, and veggie, plus more, over 55 weekly add-ons. You'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolution. Factor is awesome. The food tastes great, and you can stay on track with your healthy lifestyle goals. Go to factormeals.com/NicksChat50, promo code NicksChat50. If you're looking for a guard off the bench to come in and be instant offense, a microwave type of player, look no further than someone in Jordan Clarkson. Like Bojan Bogdanovic, he plays in a team that's not really trying to win a lot of ball games this year. And they could let Jordan Clarkson go for maybe Fournier and a heavily protected first-round pick. This year, he's averaging 17 points per game off the bench. Last year, he averaged 21 points per game. Year before that, 16 points per game. The year before that, 18.4 points per game. The dude is a bucket, and as we've seen through the OG Anunoby experience at times, when Brunson's come out of the game, the offense has taken a step back, and you could absolutely have Jordan Clarkson be the engine for that second group. But look at the field goal percentage. Hasn't shot above 45% one time in the last 4 years. He only shot above 42.5% one time, and he hasn't shot better than 35% from 3. I understand he fits a need for the Knicks, but also he plays for the Utah Jazz, F. Danny Ainge, always, and I don't think that the Knicks and Jazz are going to do business, and I'm not the biggest fan of inefficient jackers. The way this team is constructed is by inefficient players around a guy like Julius Randle. They play hard, they're multiple on defense, and they're just smart, heady basketball players. Not saying Jordan Clarkson is not that. I just think that he doesn't exactly fit the mold of what this Knicks team needs. But if you want to talk about dog and a guy that can come in and help this team off the bench, how about another guard out of Utah, Collin Sexton? Big fan of his game. Love the swag he plays with. Same problems still present themselves when it comes to Danny Ainge. But this is a guy that he could be a dog for you off the bench. He's averaging 16 and 4 this year. Good efficiency from the field. Not really a great three-point shooter. We know that about this point in Sexton's game. But having another guy that could be a spark plug, plays with that New York City type of swag, will pick you up 90 feet. He is someone that Tom Thibodeau would absolutely love. And he is a dog through and through. You know, Pat Beverly talks about dogs and pups. He ain't no pup. He's a dog, and he would bring some juice to this ball club. I would like him off the bench. Not the perfect fit, not the ideal fit, but someone that makes you better and helps you win games. And I think he could be a difference maker in a couple of games in a series and a playoff matchup. But the guy that I think is not most likely, but could be on the move, and someone I am very interested in, is DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan on this New York Knicks team makes a whole lot of sense on so many different levels. Of the 5 guys pictured, Mikal Bridges is my number 1 trade target. Don't know how realistic that is, but we know that the Chicago Bulls could move on from DeMar DeRozan. And he is the guy that could come off the bench and be a difference maker, a veteran that's played in a lot of playoff games that could help you down the stretch. And DeMar DeRozan, I don't remember who the report came out from a couple of weeks ago, said that there were 2 teams that if he got traded, he would like to play for. That included the Miami Heat and our New York Knicks. And I'm sure he would like to play with the Los Angeles Lakers as well. When you talk about through 4 games, I know it's like crazy to sometimes make blanket statements through 4 games. Through 4 games, what does this team need? Another guy that can go get his own shot, another guy that can create for himself, and others. And somewhere in the 4th quarter that may need to go get a bucket when Brunson and Julius are resting. DeMar DeRozan would be perfect off the bench. We know what he could do in the mid-range. We know what he could do with his back to the basket. And he's an underrated playmaker as well. The Bulls would be open to moving DeMar. We've heard reports coming out from every outlet that Chicago is looking to get off of a couple veterans. DeRozan could fall into that camp. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the summer, and Chicago would probably like to get an asset or 2 back for DeRozan, and instead of running the risk of him leaving in free agency. I know a lot of people are saying DeMar DeRozan would start for this team, and he would be one of the best 5 players on this roster. But I like that starting 2 guard to be able to be a catch-and-shoot, knockdown, 3-point guy like DiVincenzo. And that's not what DeRozan is. But what DeRozan could be is someone that absolutely runs your second unit, and if he's hot, if he's got it going, he could be a part of that closing lineup. We know he's not a great 3-point shooter, but we just showed you he's averaged over 20 points per game the last 4 seasons, and he hovers around 7, 6, and 5 assists per game. DeMar also gives you another option late in games that can win you games. DeRozan is still a tough bucket getter. He takes tough shots, but for him, those actually aren't tough shots. You push DeRozan into a baseline fall-away jumper from 17, and you're like, that's good D. But DeMar's like, that's the shot I wanted. I'm going to get that off. In the playoffs, you could use another guy like that. How critical was R.J. Barrett in a couple of those games against the Cavs in the Miami Heat? You may need someone to get you 20 a night in the playoffs, and DeMar DeRozan could absolutely do that. And I like adding a veteran like him. Would he buy in? I think he would, because adding DeRozan, that could make you a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference. We talked about 5 players, well, really 7 players on today's show. But I want you to pick from this screen right here. If you had to choose one of these guys on screen to trade for, who would it be? Type the initials of the player you would want to see. I'll go DeRozan as my number 1. Outside of Bridges, I don't think Bridges is really all that likely, but the Knicks should see if the Nets would at least entertain it. But I'm going DeMar DeRozan. Give me Debo in the blue and orange. Make sure you guys are following me over on Twitter at @MarshallGreen_. We can continue the conversation about our Knicks. They are playing great basketball. I haven't stopped smiling since watching this team after the OG Anunoby trade. And, the Knicks definitely won that deal. 5-0 since the OG Anunoby trade, if you count the win over the what team did they trade for? Toronto Raptors. F the Raptors. Let's go, Knicks.